Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we digging into today?
Well, today we're going all in on the life of Annie Duke.
The poker player.
Yeah, we're diving into her autobiography.
Oh, cool.
It's called Annie Duke: How I Raised, Folded, Bluffed, Flirted, Cursed, and Won Millions at the World Series of Poker.
Catchy title.
So this book came out back in 2005.
Okay.
So you might be thinking, what can I learn from a poker player from, what, almost 20 years ago?
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
But Annie Duke's story, it's about way more than just cards.
Oh.
It's about taking risks, tough decisions, and really learning how to play the game of life, you know?
I like that. And, I think what's really powerful about her story is, how she navigates a world that wasn't always welcoming to women.
Especially in poker.
Right, exactly. And she does it with this incredible blend of, intellect and strategy, but also this raw grit.
So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Annie Duke, she didn't exactly grow up dreaming of being a poker champ.
Yeah.
Nope. She was actually on a completely different path. Like the academic superstar track.
Wow. So, total opposite.
Right. She even went to this, super prestigious school, St. Paul's School in New Hampshire.
Fancy.
Totally.
Yeah.
All surrounded by woods and ponds and, steeped in tradition.
Sounds idyllic.
But it wasn't all sunshine and roses.
Oh.
Yeah, she talks about feeling like an outsider there, not really fitting in with the, preppy crowd.
I could see that.
But even in that environment, her competitive spirit was already starting to show.
How so?
Her family, obsessed with winning, especially at card games.
Oh, wow.
Their house was always packed with students, eager to challenge her father, who was a brilliant academic himself.
Like a real-life brainiac.
Oh, yeah. And get this, he never let his kids win, but he made sure they understood strategy.
So it's like their own personal boot camp for decision-making.
Exactly. And that competitive drive, it stuck with her.
I can imagine.
She aced Columbia University, then went to UPenn for grad school.
Okay, but for what?
Psycholinguistics.
Wow, she was going to be like a face on the wall of the psych department at UPenn.
Right. Picture it. Her photo up there with, Dr. Leela and Henry Gleitman, her mentor.
Leading the charge in language research.
Seriously. She was even publishing research on how kids learn language.
Amazing. So what happened? How did she end up a poker pro?
Well, there's this major turning point.
What happened?
She had a panic attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a really bad one that landed her in the hospital.
That's scary.
It was. But that's where she had this, epiphany. She realized she was living a life someone else chose for her, not one she was passionate about.
Like she was on autopilot.
Exactly. Going through the motions, but not really connecting with what she truly wanted.
That's got to be a tough realization.
And that's what sets her on this completely new path.
Towards poker.
Yeah. It's actually her brother, Howard Lederer, who kind of sparks this interest.
I've heard that name. He's a pretty big deal in poker, right?
Yeah. And remember, the whole Lederer family was, obsessed with card games.
Right, you mentioned that.
And it gets even crazier. Her mom was so competitive that, get this, she once literally dragged her dad across the kitchen floor during a game of spoons.
No way.
While 7 months pregnant with Annie.
Okay, that's next level.
Right. So you can imagine the kind of environment she grew up in, this win at all costs mentality.
Makes sense. She ended up in poker then.
And she starts playing, at first, just to make ends meet.
Really?
She was in Montana, walked into this place called the Crystal Lounge with a list of starting hands. Howard scribbled on a napkin.
That's a pretty casual start for a poker legend.
Right. And guess what? On her first night, she wins $118.
Not bad for a beginner.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
And she says it felt amazing to cover their mortgage in one night, just like that.
That feeling of winning, it's addictive.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, this is the early 90s, and she's a woman in a, very male-dominated scene.
This would have been tough.
She talks about encountering basically two types of male players.
Okay, what were they like?
First, there's the flirter who underestimated her.
And the second?
The angry chauvinist who, resented her presence at the table.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But here's the thing. She used both of those to her advantage.
What do you mean?
With the flirters, she'd play along, win their money while they were distracted. And with the chauvinists, she'd actually antagonize them, use their anger to mask her own tells.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Right. She's turning what could be seen as weaknesses into weapons.
It shows her incredible psychological insight even before she fully grasps, the power of it in poker.
Exactly. She's not just playing the cards, she's playing the player.
I see it. It's like this early sign of what's to come.
She's already developing that unique mix of analytical thinking and, emotional intelligence.
Which becomes her trademark.
Exactly.
So she's getting good, winning money, but I imagine there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. She's also dealing with, complex family dynamics.
Okay, how so?
Well, her brother, Howard, who's already a successful gambler, he becomes her backer.
Staking her, right, in exchange for a cut of the winnings.
Exactly.
That must have been a complicated relationship.
Oh, totally. It's supportive, but there's also this underlying tension.
He even placed a $500 bet on how long her marriage would last.
Yeah. It's kind of wild to think about, but it shows the kind of pressure she was under, trying to balance her ambition with her personal life.
Right, and poker was becoming more than just a game for her.
It's like a way of life, a business, and she's finding her place in it.
So she's honing her skills, she's navigating family, and she's starting to make a name for herself.
And it's only just the beginning.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit to 2004. This is where things get really interesting.
The World Series of Poker, right?
Exactly. The big one.
And it all goes down at Binion's Horseshoe Casino.
Which, if you've ever been there, it's not exactly glamorous.
More like a bingo hall than a high roller casino, right?
Right. Functional, not fancy. But that's kind of what makes it cool,
Yeah.
It's all about the poker.
And this is where we see Annie's laser focus in action.
How so?
She decides to play in the Omaha High-Low Split event.
Instead of the ladies' event. That's a bold move.
Some people saw it that way, for sure. But for Annie, it was purely strategic.
Makes sense. The prize pool for the Omaha event was way bigger.
Exactly. She was there to win, no distractions. It shows her professional mindset.
Okay, but for those of us who aren't poker pros, can you explain Omaha High-Low Split?
So it's different from Texas Hold'em, which is what most people know.
Right.
In Omaha, you get 4 cards instead of 2.
Okay.
And you have to use exactly 2 from your hand and 3 from the community cards to make the best 5-card hand.
Okay. That sounds more complicated.
It is. And then the high-low split part means the pot gets split between the best high hand and the best low hand.
So you have to be thinking about both ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. It's a lot more complex, more possibilities, and you need a whole different kind of strategy.
And this is where her tight play comes in, right? She talks about being really selective about the hands she plays.
She only goes in when she has a really strong starting position. It's all about discipline.
Which is crucial in a game like Omaha, where there are so many ways the hand can go.
Right. You can't chase every draw or get caught up in the excitement.
You have to be patient, think ahead, and know when to fold.
Exactly. And that's what makes her such a tough opponent. She's disciplined, but she can also be aggressive when she needs to be.
She's not afraid to take risks, but they're calculated risks.
Always.
And she's always adapting, watching her opponents, figuring out their weaknesses.
She talks about how important it is to read their behavior, their tells.
It's like she's playing chess, not poker.
Right. Every move is deliberate, strategic. She's always thinking a few steps ahead.
But even with all that skill, it must be an emotional roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely. The World Series of Poker, it's intense. The pressure, the stakes it can get to anyone.
She even mentions this thing called the hour of the outburst.
Yeah, that's where players start to crack under the strain.
Like fatigue and frustration take over, even for the pros.
And they make these, irrational decisions.
It's fascinating, right? The psychology of it all.
And it's a testament to Annie's mental toughness.
Yeah.
That she can stay so focused.
Not just focused, but in control, even when things aren't going her way.
But it's not just about mental toughness. It's also about knowing when to take a break, clear your head.
Step away from the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where her experience as a mother comes in, I think.
How so?
Well, she talks about how motherhood taught her to be patient.
Okay.
And how to, compartmentalize, to switch gears between demanding tasks.
That makes sense. She's juggling a lot being a mom, a poker pro, and competing at the highest level.
That's pretty remarkable.
Speaking of juggling, didn't she knock her own brother out of the tournament?
Yeah, and not just once, 3 times. She felt bad about it, of course, but as she says, business is business.
Ouch. That must be tough, playing against family.
You can hear the conflict in her voice when she talks about it.
Yeah. It's like, you want to win, but you also don't want to hurt your family.
Right. And the World Series of Poker actually changed the rules because of situations like that.
Really? What did they do?
They made it so family members couldn't play at the same table.
Wow, that's a big change.
It was controversial, but it shows how the game was evolving.
They wanted to make sure things were fair and, prevent any potential conflicts of interest.
Exactly. But back to the tournament.
Okay.
Annie's playing her game, taking down opponents, building up her chip stack.
And the pressure is mounting with every win.
Oh, yeah. And she's not just battling the other players, she's also battling her own inner demons, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, she's open about her struggles with anxiety, self-doubt.
She even talks about her experience with postpartum depression after her daughter, Maud, was born.
Right. It's a side of her we don't often see, the vulnerability.
It reminds us that even someone who seems to have it all, they still face real-life challenges.
And it's important to talk about these things to break the stigma, especially in a world like poker, where strength and resilience are so valued.
Absolutely. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to admit you're struggling.
And it's a reminder that strength comes in many forms.
So we've got Annie. She's battling her own demons. She's dealing with the pressure of the tournament, and she's playing against some of the best in the world.
It's like a pressure cooker.
And then, just as the tension is at its peak, she finds herself at the final table of the Omaha High-Low split event.
This is it, the moment she's been working towards.
The lights are bright, the cameras are rolling, the stakes couldn't be higher.
Time to see what she's made of.
So it's down to just two players now, Annie, and I think his name was Ron Graham.
Ron Graham, yeah.
And you can just feel the tension, the chips clinking, the cards shuffling.
The whole room just holding its breath.
And this is where all her hard work, all those years of practice, it all pays off.
It all comes down to this moment.
She's not just playing cards anymore, She's playing the man.
Reading him, sizing him up.
Exactly. And she's got a pretty big chip lead going in, but that doesn't mean it's a sure thing.
One lucky hand can turn everything around.
That's the thing about poker. It's always unpredictable.
And that's what makes it so exciting to watch, right? It's a mental game as much as it is about the cards.
Totally.
There's this one hand, she describes it in the book, where she basically semi-bluffs Graham.
Semi-bluffs. Okay, break that down for me.
So she doesn't actually have the best hand, but she bets strong, makes him think she does.
Risky move.
It is. But it works. He folds, and she wins the pot.
See, that's what I love about her game. It's that psychological element. She understands that sometimes, perception is reality at the poker table.
You can win with a terrible hand if you can convince your opponent you've got the nuts.
And she's a master of that, reading those subtle cues, the tells.
It looks like she's got this sixth sense.
It's not magic, though. It's her psychology background. She's not just observing behavior. She's analyzing it, interpreting it.
Using it to her advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's a dangerous player because you never really know what she's thinking.
Or what she's holding. It's like a constant game of cat and mouse.
And she's usually the cat.
So the game goes on, the blinds keep going up, the tension's building.
Thousands of dollars riding on every decision.
But Annie, she stays calm, cool, collected.
It's like she thrives under pressure.
And then there's this pivotal hand. She's got a pair of kings.
Okay, kings are good.
Graham raises her bet. And she doesn't even flinch.
What does she do?
She re-raises him a 3-bet, basically forcing him all in.
Wow, that's a power move.
It is, but it's also a huge gamble. If he's got a better hand, she could lose everything.
But she's reading him. She trusts her gut.
She senses weakness in his play.
And it's all about those instincts, knowing when to push, when to hold back.
And she's right. The flop comes. She hits a set of kings, 3 of a kind.
Nice.
She bets, he calls.
Keeping the pressure on.
The turn card doesn't help her hand, but she bets again.
She's really putting him to the test.
She knows he's probably on a flush draw, hoping to hit that diamond.
And that's what's so great about Omaha, right? There are so many ways to win, so many possibilities. It becomes a real mind game.
The river card. It's a diamond.
So he makes his flush.
It looks like he's won. But then, Annie, she does something unexpected.
What does she do?
She checks. Just lets him think he's got her beat.
That's brilliant.
He checks back, thinking he's won the pot.
And she takes it all with a bluff.
Classic Annie Duke. Playing the player, not the cards.
That must have been a crushing blow for Graham.
But it puts Annie in an even stronger position going into the final hand.
Okay, lay it on me. What happens?
The last hand, it's a nail-biter. Both players have strong hands.
High stakes.
But the river card, it gives Annie a straight.
She wins it all.
She scoops the pot, wins her first World Series of poker bracelet.
Man, that must have been an incredible feeling.
You can hear the emotion in her voice when she describes it in the book. The tears, the hugs, the pure joy of achieving a lifelong dream.
And to think she almost became a psych professor.
Right. It just goes to show sometimes life takes you down unexpected paths.
And those paths can lead to amazing things.
Absolutely. And with that win, she becomes the all-time leading female money winner at the World Series of Poker.
Talk about making history. Annie Duke, what a legend! Her story's about way more than just poker, you know? It's about taking risks, believing in yourself, and never giving up on your dreams.
It's a powerful message for anyone, no matter what game you're playing in life.
So, to all our listeners out there, think about it. What risks are you willing to take to pursue your passions? How can you use your strengths to overcome those challenges?
Because Annie Duke's journey shows us that anything is possible if you're willing to play the game your own way.